I want to give you this bizarre hypothetical scenario. I don't think it's going to come as a surprise to anyone, but I'm a big fan of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Die-hard fan, and have been that way for over 2 decades, through the good times and the bad times, which, spoiler alert, there have been way more bad times than good. Could probably count on one hand the number of good times I've had in my 2 decades, but I digress. Point is, I'm a Jaguars fan. Now, while I am also a Jaguars fan, I am also in the business of growing my channel, and I see that an easy way to grow the channel could be to become a fan of a different team. The Jaguars aren't exactly the most popular team out there. They don't win a lot, they don't get a lot of primetime games, but a team like the Dallas Cowboys? Now we're talking. So I decided for 1 week to switch my allegiance and go from a Jaguars fan to a Cowboys fan. And it's the week that the Cowboys are playing the Jaguars. So during this week, I am rooting hard for my Dallas Cowboys to defeat the Jacksonville Jaguars. And when they don't, I get really upset. Something like that would seem really freaking stupid, right? It makes you look indecisive and look like a moron. It negates your fandom entirely. It makes people think less of you, especially if you pretend that you're a Cowboys fan for life when you really haven't been. And it just isn't a good look in a bunch of different ways. You probably shouldn't be doing something like that. Well, I bring that up because this man right here is Christopher Bond, the Republican governor of Missouri for 2 terms, a United States senator for a quarter century from 1987 to 2011. We can debate his politics all we want, that's neither here nor there, because that's not what this video was about. This video is about Bond pulling off one of the dumbest stunts I've ever seen, especially when it comes to a political figure in the National Football League. And more than half a century later, it deserves a deep dive today. Because Christopher Bond abandoned his fandom in favor of a few votes, I suppose. And it backfired miserably on him. Because this is the story behind, at least from an NFL history perspective, one of the dumbest politicians ever. Make sure you hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel. Because we post every single day on here about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL with stories like this one. So make sure that you join the community if you haven't done so already, if you like that sort of stuff. Thanks in advance for your support, and with that in mind, let's talk about the time that the Show Me State showed us something really stupid. Before I talk about the actual incident in question and just how stupid it was, we need some context to understand the 2 teams involved in our story. It's December 1st, 1974, and things are not going great for this team right here, the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs have been a mainstay of football for years. This was a team just a few years removed from winning the Super Bowl, and a team that had finished above 500 every year since 1965. Usually, you could count on the Chiefs to be a good team and a safe bet to do well. However, things were not that way in 1974. Hank Stram's philosophy was outdated, and the star players were all past their prime. With 3 games to go, the Chiefs were out of the playoff hunt, and were guaranteed to finish the year without a winning record, sitting at 4-7 thanks to a bottom 5 offense and a bottom 5 defense in the conference. Even though the season started off all right with a 2-1 record through 3 games, the Chiefs found themselves losing 6 of their ensuing 8, including a stretch midway through the season where they lost 5 of 6. This season was the beginning of what would be some really dark times for the Chiefs, as the glory days were officially over. However, while one team in Missouri was struggling, another team that played in the Show Me State was showing off. And that was this team right here, as the St. Louis Cardinals were looking like the best team in football. The Cards have never made it to the playoffs since moving to St. Louis in 1960. But after years of heartache, it seemed as though the Cardinals, led by head coach Don Coryell, were going to break that slump. After 11 weeks, the Cardinals were 9-2, tied for the best record in the NFL with the Oakland Raiders, and boasting the best record in the NFC, thanks in part to the best offense in the conference. St. Louis started the season on a 7-game winning streak, and their offense was nothing short of electrifying. Jim Hart was a Pro Bowl quarterback. Terry Metcalf was a Pro Bowl running back. Mel Gray was one of the best receivers in football and a Pro Bowl wide receiver. And the offensive line had studs everywhere, including the future Hall of Famer Dan Dierdorf. At a time where scoring points was really tough due to the way the rules were set up, The Cardinals had a 3-game winning streak where they scored more than 30 points all 3 times. They were the only team throughout the entire 1974 season to do that. The Cardinals were going to be playing postseason football, as despite some close calls in the past, with some historic collapses, like what happened in 1966 and 1970, nothing was stopping them this year. This was a very different Cardinals team. The Cardinals had bragging rights across the NFC for the time being. Now, it was time for bragging rights in the state, as their Week 12 matchup was a game against none other than the struggling Kansas City Chiefs. This man right here, Governor Bond, was going to be attending the game between the Chiefs and the Cardinals, as he was going to be on hand not just to entertain 20 Republican governors across the country who were in town for the weekend, but to hand out the governor's cup, as in the trophy handed out to the winner of this in-state matchup. These teams played each other every year in the preseason, and even though they hadn't played too many regular season games against each other yet, they were bitter rivals, seeing as the rivalry between the American Football League and the National Football League was still there, with conference pride between the AFC and the NFC very much being a thing due to people having strong feelings about the merger. And in the days leading up to the game, Bond was asked about what it was going to be like attending the game and who he was going to be rooting for, seeing as he liked football a lot. And if there's one thing about Bond that you need to know, it's that he is a Chiefs fan all the way. He not only went to just about every Chiefs game he could when he got the chance, but he was a literal season ticket holder for the Chiefs. Doesn't get much more devoted than that. So seeing as the Chiefs and Cardinals both played in Missouri, and you don't want to take anyone off, you could go one of 2 ways with your response. You could say, look, I'm really proud of how well the Cardinals are playing this year and how they're representing the great state of Missouri, and I'll pull for them after this week. But I'm a Chiefs season ticket holder, I'm a huge fan of this team, and my allegiance to them comes first. Or you could say something like, I hope we see a really good, clean game on Sunday. Something non-committal like that. Say anything along those lines, and I'm not making this video, and no one's talking about this half a century later. Nothing wrong with being a Chiefs season ticket holder and rooting for the Chiefs, especially when that's incredibly common in public knowledge to the residents of a state. A lot of politicians have fans of a certain team. Even Barack Obama was a die-hard Chicago Bears fan. No one is going to bat an eye at that if you say you're rooting for the team that you're a fan of. In fact, it'd be kind of weird to not root for the team you support. Just say, rooting for my Chiefs, I want to see a good game, and I hope the Cards make our state proud in the playoffs, and you're golden. Instead, Bond decided to do the opposite, and decided to say, screw it, I'm a Cardinals fan now. I guess he felt it would be a bit weird to go to a game in St. Louis to entertain a bunch of his colleagues and root for the road team. Even though not everyone will be rooting for the Cardinals in the area where they'll be watching the game due to their affiliations and how the Cards' performance could impact their favorite team in the division and the wild card hunt. Look, if you were a governor coming to this game and you were a fan of the Dallas Cowboys, you're not rooting for the Cardinals to win this game, so it's not really that out of place. But despite being a Chiefs fan, and despite everyone knowing that he was a Chiefs fan, apparently he felt it was a good idea to abandon his team and go for the Cardinals. Because as he said to reporters, I have to root for the Cardinals. Even though I have season tickets for the Chiefs games, I'll root for the Cards after their great showing this year. Of all the answers to give, that is probably the worst one, you absolute bandwagon front-runner loving governor. Chiefs aren't that good this year? Screw it. There's another team in this state. We're hitching a ride on the Cards car. No sane person in their right mind would do this. This is like a Ravens fan rooting for the Commanders to beat them if they played each other. Or a Jets fan rooting for the Giants to beat them if they played each other. Or a Texans fan rooting for the Cowboys to beat them if they played each other. It's nonsensical. But if you think that's where this story ends, oh no. Oh, it gets much, much worse. Because it's one thing to just switch your allegiance for some reason. It's another thing to do what Governor Bond was about to do after the game. Because this game right here featured good and bad news for the governor. The good news was that his Chiefs won and pulled off the upset. The bad news was that his Cardinals lost. In what turned out to be the final game ever won by head coach Hank Stram as the head coach of the Chiefs, Kansas City won the Governor's Cup by a final score of 17-13, as despite not scoring any points in the first half, the Chiefs turned on the Jets in the second half and took control of the contest. The Chiefs forced 3 turnovers defensively, and rookie running back Cleo Miller had the best game of his career at the time, coming out of nowhere to run the ball 15 times for 95 yards while picking up over 100 yards from scrimmage. And for St. Louis quarterback Jim Hart, one of the best in the game, and a second-team All-Pro that season, he was held in check, as he completed less than 50% of his passes and threw 2 interceptions, with his passer rating of 50.6 being the second worst rating for him on the season. It was a great performance by Kansas City with the whole state watching, even if one notable Chiefs fan was rooting for them to lose for some reason. But this is where it gets insane, because after the game, guess what Governor Bond decided to do? That's right, he went into the Cardinals' locker room and tried to console head coach Don Coryell. This man had been a Cards fan for all of a couple of hours, seeing as his allegiance was with the Chiefs. And here he was, trying to get into the Cardinals' locker room to console the losing coach and tell him to keep his head up. Governor Bond spoke with Coach Coryell and said, "I was really rooting for you guys to win this game. And if there's anything I can do to help you guys going forward, please let me know." And I love Coryell's response, because he basically told the governor off and told him to get out, saying, "Thanks, but we have to do it ourselves." In other words, we know what you're about. You can't help us at all. There's nothing you can do to help us. You're a freaking Chiefs fan who was trying to pander to our team for some reason. We don't want your help. We came this far without you. Just go away. I am no notes. Absolutely brilliant on Coryell's part. Also, gotta love how the Cardinals were 9-2 before Governor Bond hopped on the bandwagon and ended up losing 3 of their final 4 games after he hopped on. It's like he had the anti-Midas touch. So what's the moral of the story here? It doesn't matter how prominent of a person you are. No one likes a bandwagon fan. If you're going to abandon your team, and your normally good team I might add, and root for the rival because they've won a few games, you're going to get some really funny looks, and you're going to have people questioning you. And if you're going to do that, and then pretend that you've been a fan the entire time, and act all buddy-buddy with the head coach of the team and try to console them after they lost, when you've literally never rooted for them in your life before this game, then you're going to be scrutinized until the end of time in the eyes of NFL fans. You want to root for both teams in the state of Missouri to do well, and you want to root for one of the teams to go on a deep playoff run? Be my guest. You want to do this and do, well, whatever the heck Governor Bond did? Absolutely not. Because on this day in 1974, the governor of Missouri was Bond. Bandwagon Bond. Be sure to like and subscribe if you have not done so already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And check out my other channels, JG8 for the history of college football, JG7 for the history of baseball, and JG9 News, where we talk about all things happening in the NFL. Join me every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we'll play live NFL trivia for cash prizes. And make sure to join me live, as we're on stream just about every single day. And thanks to all our Patreon members and our YouTube members for helping out the channel. See how you become a member and show your support financially in the description down below.